Bruce Lee Clark, for those of you who do not know me. Couple of things I want us to do. In front of you is the mission statement of the Bennington Police Department, which was fashioned by a community of people just downstairs on the first floor one evening, and then adopted eventually by the select board in August. And get a feeling for it. It's really talking about working with the community, being accountable to the community, and the department and the community will achieve this through collaborative and positive relationships which contribute to the betterment of our quality of life. That's the goal. That's the mission. And so what we're working on is part of that, it seems to me. And you are the third group to be involved in this process. And to me, it's been exceptionally positive. I've been thrilled with the input that everybody has brought to this. Couple of things. We'll do some introductions, just in dancing. The Danes are not going to be happy with me again, but it's perfectly okay. But we will do some introductions. I just want you to know that there are bathrooms available, should you need them, through that door and through the next door out into that little landing. First, turn left immediately and go down that hallway and you'll find them there. We will take a break or two, but probably one. After about an hour to an hour and a half, somewhere in that neck of the woods. If you are in need of a break, just let me know. Just signal it. Don't be afraid to let me know that. There will be observers here. There almost always are, and their job is to observe and nothing else. So the communication is between us, okay? And all our participation is important. When we get to working on the statement, a couple of things. Since Michelle finds it easier if one person is speaking to her, she will be making the changes up on the board to the document only after I have said go ahead and make that change. And then if you don't like it or whatever, you talk to me, don't talk to her. That's the key. Your job, our job together, is to perfect the document, especially the section called Purpose, Policy, and Definitions. The last section, which is Procedures, we should, if you have questions or suggestions about that, that's great, and we should note them and write them in, or somehow identify them. You have to have an answer to be here.
Oh, listen.
Okay?
I got it.
Good. So, in order to do this, we can work on the principles or procedures rather are what the chief of police will work on. They're the sort of nuts and bolts pieces. But we can obviously make suggestions and ask questions, make sure that certain things are in there. But our focus is really on purpose, policy, and definitions. And that should be a lot for today. One last thing about this particular, let me just say a couple things about this particular one on the investigation of hate crimes, or investigation, and I would say, and reporting of hate crimes. We did not have a policy in the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. There hasn't been a policy here at the Bennington Police Department. There really aren't very many in the state of Vermont, if any, that I can see. We are using as the model, and I've already sent this to you, but you know it, the IACP model. That means that a couple of things should be evident. One, it's not very Vermont specific, and we need to make it more Vermont specific. Almost all of these policies or of this, almost all prosecutions under this particular situation will, by necessity, be local and state. The feds don't get that involved that much. It's true of virtually all criminal prosecutions. The vast majority of them are local and state. So we're going to have, our work is in part going to have to, that's why I sent you the Vermont Statues. We may need to make this much more state-oriented. Questions about that kind of stuff? There are a couple of other nuts and boltsy sorts of things. Excuse me. I've had this for months and months and months and months. We're trying to figure out why. It is not COVID, I should tell you that. Whenever the policy that we'll eventually see, the policy, and Michelle, you can actually bring that up if you want. Whenever the policy says the agency, we're going to automatically say, we're going to actually say, it's right up there, investigation of hate. Okay, you got it. You'll see up here almost immediately it'll say the agent. This agency, we're going to say the Bennington Police Department. And the first time we do that, we'll put it in parentheses, otherwise known as BPD. So that's going to be it. We've been making those changes throughout. All model policies are going to end up saying that we're never going to talk about the agency. We're always going to talk about Bennington Police Department. The only other suggestion I'm going to make before we get started doing introductions is, excuse me again, is that we avoid passive voice. If you know what that is, fine. If you don't, I'll try to help us out. It's when something else happens to, it would be nice if you start the sentence with it, almost always going to end up in passive voice. Let's not do that. Let's say what we want and direct. Okay, introduction. What I'd like you to try to do, because I used this with my students back in the day when I was teaching, it helps me, because I am horrible with names. And it connects me to something, and it doesn't have to be anything mundane like this is what I do. Any fact will do. And I try to, if you have a weird fact about yourself that will help me remember you, or it doesn't even have to be weird, but a fact that makes it distinct. So I will start. My name is Bruce Lee Clark. I'm the chair of this. These groups I'm on the select board, but I spent my first year my first year in college, or I think it may have been my second year in college, yes, working at a psychiatric hospital doing admissions on Fridays and Saturday nights from 11 until 8. And among my admissions was a gentleman who in February decided to take all his clothes off, paint himself yellow, and become a stripe in the rug. It's, in February in Syracuse, that wasn't all great, but actually what was most damaging was the paint. And we had to try to get it. We spent hours getting the paint off. Don't ever do that. So that's my one weird fact for today. Mark, would you like to be number 2?
I'll go second since I'm the pastor of Second Congregational Church. My name is Mark. I am the pastor of Second Congregational Church here in Bennington. A weird fact, I lived on a boat for a year, a tugboat with 7 other people in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Dan?
My turn.
Yes.
Dan Ferrara. Last week I mentioned my rugby. Last meeting I mentioned rugby. This week we'll mention I enjoy riding motorcycles. I enjoy riding motorcycles.
Ah, really? Who knew? You did. Good. We'll skip Cindy for a moment since she apparently is not here. And we'll start going on with you, Mark.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamar Bivens. I've been a resident here in Vermont since 2010, on and off. I've done some studies into racial profile and legislation that a lot of people find themselves mass incarcerated for. So I felt being here gave me a good opportunity to share some my education with them.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
I'm Grace. I am a nurse with Shaftesbury, but I have been
Speak up,
in
please.
3 years.
I appreciate that.
I can't honestly
You can't.
I can't. You should have properly listened to it.
Okay, we'll say that Grace is not strange, but I find that to be untrue.
Oh, Bruce, this is the third time for me, so I gotta dig deep. I'm Dan Monks. I'm the assistant town manager for the town of Bennington. I worked for the town for about 22 years. That's not the odd fact. Odd fact is that I used to be very involved in Irish road bowling. Look it up on the internet. It's a lot of fun, and I actually participated in the North American Championships. It's held every year in West Virginia, which was an experience in itself as well. So, weird fact number 3. Thank you, Bruce.
Wow. Road bowling.
Irish road bowling. Look it up.
I know it.
Some good videos.
Absolutely. Hi, Michelle.
I'm Michelle Farrer with the Bennington Police Department, and I'm just going to tell you what I love. I'm an outdoor person. I love to bike, hike, snowshoe, cross-country ski.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. And can I suggest, let me show you how this is going to work. We're going to start actually back at line 1, Michelle, which we can't even see. There we go. I'm going to suggest that if we call this policy investigation and reporting of hate crimes. And we'll see how that comes out. We should have a color on that, shouldn't we? If we're, I can never remember how we do that. Dan Hunt, where do we go for that? Review? Yes. There we go. Okay. Yeah, just do it again, maybe the easiest part. Partly be,
That's okay.
just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah.
We'll take that up eventually. Oh, I should say process, just so that you all know. This is what's going to happen while she's typing. You're all going to receive, Michelle's going to take them back. She and Dan will look at them. They'll send them to me. I will then send this all to you. Okay? So you get a chance to see it. You'll have about 48 hours or so, hopefully maybe 72, 2 or 3 days. Send it back to me if it's correct or with any corrections you might suggest or additions that we missed. I will then add those or see if we can do that. And then what we'll do is they'll come back and they'll go out to the state's attorney, the town attorney, and the chief of police. Okay? So that's where we are. So that's what a correction will look like, and it'll always look like that, something like that. Okay? Shall we look at the purpose? And the purpose actually, I think, is,
First,
yes,
not to belabor over
Yeah.
the title of the document, but I noticed in the IACP need to know statement,
Yes.
they delineated between hate crimes and hate incidences.
right.
Or incidents.
Yeah,
Our policy is to cover strictly hate crimes. Is that correct?
I wouldn't necessarily say so, no, because you don't know whether, and Dan can help you out better, but you don't know whether something is necessarily a crime until you've done some investigation.
Yeah, we have to conclude that whatever took place fits the elements of a crime per se.
First, and then, in this case, was it motivated by, and, you know, so, you're right. This may not be inclusive enough.
I don't have a problem with the title, I just want to...
I think we are talking about investigating both hate crimes and incidences, because so let me give you an example of why. Even if it's an incident, or perhaps an incident, the chief is required under a directive from the Attorney General of the state of Vermont to report suspected incidents, even if they don't rise to the level of crime. The Attorney General wants to know that information.
That's exactly why I was raising.
Okay, so I think that when we let's all keep that in mind. So we are talking I don't think you can go into a situation and automatically be thinking that it's a crime. I don't know police that do that. Generally speaking, you do the investigation and then you make a determination. Does it have elements of a crime? Does it fit elements that are statutory? In this case, are they elements that are not just statutory for the crime, but also having motivation? Because that's what you have to be able to prove to do the enhancement, right? Okay. So, can we talk about purpose at this point? What would we like to do? I have one suggestion which seems mundane, but I'm happy to wait. Under purpose, do we have to say the purpose of this policy? I always hate students who repeat the question in their answer in the first. So I would say, get rid of the purpose of, to delete it, the purpose of right there. Even the word the. And then I would capitalize this policy, get rid of is to. I know, don't you love it? And is to. And then add es, delete that one, yeah, cross that one out too. Yeah. It's okay, Michelle. Nobody's watching. I know, it's hard. And then I would add es to establish. No, at the end. Establish says. Okay? And then I would add one more thing. Establishes guidelines for identifying, comma, and eliminate and, investigating, comma, and reporting, hate crimes, that's good, and assisting victimized individuals and communities. Swift and strong response by law enforcement can help stabilize and calm the community as well as aid in victims' recovery. That all seems true, but I wanted to make sure that reporting was in there. You see the kind of thing that I'm asking for, that we're hoping we will do? Question, anybody? Anybody want to add anything to the purpose? Where does it seem okay?
Well,
Sorry.
well, Mark was just speaking about the hate incidents, so.
Oh, there you go, yes. Mm-hmm. So, this first sentence is going to be funky, but you're right, Jamar, that's right. So, establishing and investigating or reporting hate crimes and incidences. Say what? I can't hear you.
Hate crimes
Or incidences. And assisting victimizing, yeah, you could say or incidences after crimes. Does that make sense?
Yes, the ISAP document used incidents.
Oh, incidents. Yeah, that's the better word. So, should we try? Let's try it, Michelle. Let's add or incidents. I can't, there you go. And then we probably want to have some punctuation after that. After the word incidents, correct? Or do we need, is it a comma or a colon?
I don't know.
Or a semicolon, I mean. Try it with a comma and just leave it there for a moment and give me a space. There we go. Thank you, that's good catch. What do you think, everybody?
I'm starting to have a concern about the second sentence.
It's okay.
That it sounds as though what we want to do is stabilize and calm rather than that our concern is for stability and calm in the wake of
Right.
a crime rather than
Support.
and to make clear that as a community, hate crimes are taken seriously.
Right. All right. So this is it. Remember, this is the description of the policy. It ain't the policy.
Right.
So I find it helpful sometimes. I agree with you. I think I was uneasy with sentence number 2. I'm not sure I could identify the reasons why, but I was uneasy with sentence number 2. I think you helped me with that. Can we come to work on the policy and then come back to the purpose and see if we're doing it? We might be able to solve it there, or we may know better how to respond to sentence number 2. So are we all, yes,
Just
Dan?
one minor, maybe you can see if you agree. Just I think the sentence works. So it talks about establishing guidelines for identifying and investigating, and for assisting victimizing.
Yeah,
that's
and or
nice.
assisting.
I was having trouble with that, so.
Yep. So after the word and before assisting, second line, line 6,
Yeah,
where it says and assisting,
yeah.
it should say and for assisting. No. After the word and before assisting.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Sorry. And then just put in the word for. Thanks.
Does that read better?
I think it does. Because we're really, these are two, that's why I think, okay, after the word incidents, put it, instead of a comma, put a semicolon.
Yeah, I think you're right. That works better.
Adding the word for makes much more sense then. That's right, you got it. Does everybody see why that I think works better? But we still we need to deal with now line 7 and 8, but let's see if we can come back to line 7 and 8 after let's looking at, and Michelle, I can actually tell you one thing that you want to change, and you don't even need to worry too much about it. See on line 17 after the word consequences? Just push delete. Just push delete somewhere. No. No, go, not backwards. Just get yourself out of that, yep. Now push up in the upper right-hand corner the word delete. Yeah, what you're trying to do is just get rid of that space. It doesn't, if you can't do it, don't worry about it. It's all one sentence, and for some reason I missed that. So, any acts or threats of violence, property damage, harassment, intimidation, or other crimes motivated by hate and bias, and designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals, are viewed very seriously by we don't need to say it now, but the Bennington Police Department, in parentheses BPD, and will be given high priority. This agency shall, and again, it will be the BPD, shall employ all necessary resources and vigorous law enforcement action to identify and arrest hate crime perpetrators. Also recognizing the particular fears and distress typically suffered by victims, the potential for reprisal and escalation of violence, and the far-reaching negative consequences of these crimes on the community. The BPD shall be mindful of and responsive to the security concerns of victims and their families. That's the first part. So that's really, it's actually two, and I'm wondering if, so the first part really is designed, I really see this in three segments, and help me out if you think I'm just blowing smoke here, because I see it as one, investigating the incident, two, supporting and responding to the needs of the community, and three, and the victims. And starting in 19, that new paragraph is about analyzing, creating a system for collecting, analyzing, and reporting incidents of crime. So you see, it's really three parts. It's one, it's the investigative part. Two, it's the where it starts on line 15 also. And then three, where it starts on 19. The system for collecting, analyzing, and reporting incidents of crime. Am I just crazy about that? Or does that not make any sense? Or what? What do you think?
I agree with this.
Or it doesn't, it's not essential that my word goes, because I'm one of you here. Do you see what I'm trying to suggest? And if you don't,
I'm sorry,
okay. So I actually see the policy as having three parts. Part one is all of this up to the word also. Also really is a second part, and if you look through the procedures, oftentimes that they're thinking of it in the procedures as a second part. How do you respond to, how does the police respond and to the community and to the victims of this alleged crime? And then three is the reporting part. The collecting, analyzing, and reporting part. That seems to me to be the logic of this, which is not reflected in the structure of that policy. That's all I'm saying.
yes, that makes sense.
So, Michelle, before also, put your cursor right after perpetrators
What line are we on?
on line 15. Sorry, it's a great question. Always, I should do that always.
So we.
Right after perpetrators,
Yeah.
put your cursor right there. After the period.
Just before also.
Just before also.
Yeah.
Yeah. And push enter. That's what happens when you push enter. Not space, enter. In other words, just create a new sentence. Just create a new sentence. I don't know if that under.
Oh, just return.
Yeah, just push return.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's a. Mine says enter. Sorry, I have something in my down in my front. Okay. So what do we think? Is this enough? Does it say what we want it to say?
All the instances of this agency are all going to be changed to the BPD.
You got it.
Okay.
Every time it says this agency, it'll just say the BPD.
Bruce,
Mhm.
the last point about the reporting, et cetera, do you think it makes sense to refer to state statute or state law or AG's directives or something? I don't know if we just.
Yeah.
We can leave it like this, but it may be nice to tie it back to existing.
Yes, and what I've been, yes, Dan, I think you're absolutely right. There's an AG directive, unfortunately, I can't find the citation to it, but I know it's there, that says that every incident of suspected racial bias, or however we want to talk about it, that incident must be reported to the AG's office, the Division of Civil Rights, because they're trying to keep better records of what's happening in Vermont, if that makes sense.
So I don't know what the categories are that they're collecting. I've looked at the data, but I don't know what the categories are. These are not all the categories for bias or hate crimes in the state.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Do we want to add?
Yes.
Do we need anything to these?
Yeah, we do. That's why you, let's talk about the categories. That should be in the statute, and I actually sent you that copy of the statute. There's that one if you want it.
Is that section 1455?
It is section 1455. So, 1455. So, under 1455, they are race, color, I'm looking at them. So, color has to be added after race.
And it's actual or perceived.
Yes.
Yes, it'll have to say actual or perceived. So, this agency shall develop a standard for collecting, analyzing, and reporting incidents of crime that are in whole or in part, I think that's directed against individuals because of actual, so after the words of, and help me out folks if you don't think this isn't the way we do this. Actual or perceived, you shouldn't have the words, actual or perceived. Race, yep, color, religion, national origin, so let's get rid of ethnicity because that's not in the it should say national, where am I?
National origin.
National origin, right? Then it should say sex
Sex instead of gender.
instead of gender, so gender should be crossed out.
And sex.
Add sex, right? Ancestry,
Go ahead and add ancestry.
Go ahead and add it. Ancestry, A-N-C-E-S-T-R-E-Y, comma, age, comma, service in the United States Armed Forces. This is one that's very unique to Vermont.
Service in the armed.
In the U.S. Armed Forces, U.S. and then Armed Forces are both capitalized, the A and the M, comma, disability as defined by 21 VSA, and you're never going to find the little squiggly sign for sections. You got it there?
Yeah, sure, she can.
You can put all that in, and then, yeah, God bless you. Don't worry about I'll put in the section sign, or Dan can. We can. It's substantially harder in Word. And then sexual orientation is there, good. Or gender identity. And then put or gender identity, and then cross out or disability. Yeah, cross that out. And put or before gender identity. And we probably ought to, Dan, let's just remember to put in a citation for that. It's 13 VSA 1455. So we'll cite to the statute. That's just a quotation of the statute. So, yeah. Good. That helps. What about up above? Take your time. There's no, we're not in any hurry.
I'm looking at line 19. This agency shall be mindful of and responsive to the security concerns of victims and their families. I'm wondering if we want to broaden that at all, and acknowledging that when a hate crime is committed, it's not just the victim or their family that are the victimized by it, or traumatized by it.
Right.
So the security concerns of victims, their families, and affected community members.
Yeah. I think so. It's, so, again, and I would suspect the VPD is going to be mindful, right? I mean, would be doing that now. That would be reflective. So if we were to do that, yes, eliminate that and put a comma after victims, their families, and after families after the, yeah, before, there we go, and the, how did you put that?
I said and affected community members.
And affected community members, yeah.
Should we say affected or impacted? I don't know.
Impacted?
Well,
What do you think?
I think impacted sounds.
I like impacted too.
I do too, but a lot of people don't like it as a verb.
Is it an A or an E if we use affected?
That's the part that that's what I always have to go look it up. I will have to say that I always have to go look it up. Is it A?
It would be.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm
I
fine.
like
I'm
impacted.
fine with impacted. I think.
Okay, let's try impacted and see what happens.
So
Will
their families and
the board go crazy if we say impacted community members?
Community members that we're talking
Yeah. It does, and that's one of the reasons why we're gonna probably have to go back up the purpose. Thank you, Mark, that's good. And that also deals with the notion of the far-reaching negative consequences of these crimes on the community. Yep. Let's go back up to lines 11 through 15, just so that I can. I still think that's okay. Anybody see anything in lines 11 through 15? If not, we're going to go back up to lines 7 and 8.
Very minor thing on line 12.
Let's do it.
Hate and bias, can we change that to hate or bias?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the change and to or?
And.
Change and or. I'm trying to think, yes, because in fact, the two terms actually, if you say a and there, then you're causing that. No, I would just say, just get rid of and entirely and say or. And you may have noticed in one of the texts around this model policy, in the original version, it does say that they're using the terms hate and bias interchangeably. And that's why or makes much more sense there. And actually, that's the way it gets used legally. It's hate or bias. Bias is a form of hate. Back in the days when we were in law school, that's how we were taught to interpret that one. So bias, when it deals with acts or threats of acts, and that's key. So it's a threat of an act of violence or property damage or harassment, intimidation, or other crimes motivated by hate. And the crimes themselves, actually in Vermont, in some states those crimes are very specific. And in Vermont, it's not quite that way. But this is dealt with, then you end up with the enhancement. But this we're dealing with just how does the Bennington PD respond to these? Anything else on that first paragraph? That was a good catch, and it's not small. It's the little words that matter the most.
The and between bias and design should also be removed so the sentence makes sense.
Oh, yes, should that, thank you, you're right. Let's see if we can read that so that I just want to remind myself why the word and was there in the first place. Any acts or threats of violence, property damage, harassment, intimidation, or other crimes motivated by hate or bias. Okay. And, yeah, now that's an interesting question, Mark, because I think you could do it two ways. You could put a comma after bias,
And then after.
and then eliminate, yes, that's an interesting question.
That was a tough one.
It's harder than it looks. Okay, so here's the question, and this is, Joe, you're going to have to help me out. I see exactly what you were getting at. I think if we were to say it this way, in which is the way I think you were thinking, and I think that's what I was thinking. Crimes, I'm starting at the beginning of line 12. Crimes motivated by hate or bias, comma, don't write anything yet, Michelle. I'm just listening to it. Designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals, comma, are viewed very seriously by this agency and be given high priority. In a way, what they're doing is utilizing a definition of a hate crime. And so The other way to think about it is, it's a crime that is motivated by hate or bias, and it also has to be designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals.
Which is not what we want to say.
It's not what we want to say.
I don't think that is what we want to say.
I actually think that's what
IACP wanted to say.
that's what IACP wants to say, but I think that doesn't comport with.
So,
I don't think that comports with Vermont law, actually.
can't remember where I read it, but the.
I don't think the design to infringe upon the rights of individuals, that's a great federal definition, but it's
Yes.
not a good state
Right,
definition.
yes.
Is that what you're going to say, Mark?
That's what I was going to
Sorry.
say, is that the infringement upon rights is the federal definition.
Right.
We don't want to define a hate crime to mean that it has to be motivated by hate, and it also has to be designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals.
Right, which is why I think Jamar's point about getting rid of the "and" there is exactly correct.
Maybe you just delete the whole thing.
What would happen if we did that? Let's just listen to it for a minute. Because this is, right. Any acts or threats of violence, property damage, harassment, intimidation, or other crimes motivated by hate or bias are viewed very seriously by this agency and will be given high priority.
Yeah, why do we want to fight about whether or not they're designed to?
Infringe upon the rights of
If they're motivated by hate or bias, end of discussion.
Yes, because that's how the Vermont statute reads, as I read it. If you look at Title 30, a person who commits, causes to be committed, or attempts to commit any crime, and whose conduct is maliciously motivated by the victim's actual perceived blah, 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 shall be subject to the following penalties.
Right.
Period. So there isn't in state law any requirement that it be motivated or designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals. In state law. It does in federal law, absolutely. Federal law requires that prosecutors show that the intent of the bias and hatred was designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals. I think, Dan, you're probably right.
It's just another inquiry that we don't need to make because
Right.
it's motivated by hate or bias. That's
Right. So can we delete from "and" to individuals? And let's all remember, this is all reversible right
That's
now.
right. Can all be changed.
We can always change our minds before we get done. You know? Actually, you can change your minds a week from now and come back and we'll have an online conversation about it. It's been known to happen. I actually think that makes it clearer. And it makes it... I personally like the notion, I don't want to have to prove that it was designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals, even though I think the rights of individuals are exceptionally important. But I don't think the Vermont statute requires us to do that.
No, I mean, that's a civil rights violation, that's not.
It is, it's a federal prosecution. That's a federal prosecution, absolutely. If I saw that that was also happening there, if somebody was doing something out of bias or hatred, and it was designed to infringe upon their constitutional rights, I might send that one to the U.S. Attorney in Berlin.
Right.
Right?
So, just a question for those to consider that deal with the actual nuts and bolts of the policy. Should that get into the policy somewhere? Should that be included in the policy?
Well, that we
That if
referral?
to refer when the rights of there's an infringement of the rights of the individual.
I don't know.
I don't recall seeing it in the
I don't either, and that's why I'm.
procedures.
Oh, there it is.
So it does talk about reporting, and I don't even know if we do this or not, if we're required to, but it does talk about reporting to the FBI.
It does. And I don't know if we do that either.
I don't know if it's required or not, so it's,
It is under the Matthew Shepherd statute. I went back and looked at it. I don't know if we do it, but it's supposedly required by the Matthew Shepherd one. Do you want to make a note of that? And do you happen to know whether we send?
So remember we mentioned that CAD system
Right,
last meeting?
but we did
So
last
in
time,
that-
but these guys haven't heard about
Yeah,
it.
so I'm saying in that system, every incident we do what's called coding it out as well. And there's different offenses and statutes and circumstances that are coded within each incident. And part of the circumstances that are chosen from are any biases involved. And you check off on that. And the FBI actually goes into that system, and that's where the FBI pulls their
So they call it.
Yep.
they put it
So
in.
our responsibility is to code out each incident
Right.
correctly.
Right.
And then the FBI goes in and pulls their stats that they.
That's cool.
Well, that's good to know. I did not. So it's in essence, hi there,
Hi, I apologize for that.
that's okay, it's nice to have you here.
Hi, nice to be here.
Great. So we've made a few changes so far.
Okay.
And I don't know what you brought with you, but you can take a deep breath.
Yep, I know I'm ready.
And I perfectly understand. Just take a deep breath.
Yep.
We're right now just looking at both purpose and policy, and where we just ended up is what we're trying to do. The model policy that I sent you is designed really because they can't, it's an internet, it's the IACP works across not just even countries, but I mean, the United States, but across countries. So it naturally reads like a federal statute. It depended a lot on it. And we're trying to make it match the state of
Right.
Vermont, and state statutes. And among the things that we sort of were reminded of, under the state of Vermont hate crime statute, virtually any crime can be a hate crime if it's motivated by hate or bias. And in federal law, it also has to be designed to infringe upon the rights of individuals, but not in state law. That's why we just caught ourselves and ended up, after a little bit of discussion, crossing that whole part out. Not that we don't think that it's important.
Right.
And then we just had a discussion about, well, reporting, and we just heard Dan say that when they code every incident and every crime, how they code it means that the FBI can actually come into that coding system and pull out what they need. So that's I was thinking we actually had to actively send things to the FBI, but we don't. It's because of our system, they can actually access it and pull out what they need, because they're using it.
Yeah, they can, so in those circumstances, we have hundreds of different things. They can pull out whether a firearm was used in an incident. They
Right.
can pull out whether any sort of bias was involved, whether
Right.
any of the ones that we listed, whether it was on a road was involved, a vehicle was involved, type that narrows everything down. They can pull out all of those different circumstances to produce different statistics for themselves.
Okay, good. Yes, I think that's really helpful to keep in mind as we're going through this.
Okay.
Thank you.
So again, Bruce, I just want to make sure my question is on the record. So
It is.
For those talking about the procedures,
Okay,
is it appropriate then to, in some place in the procedures, to indicate to give a definition of what the federal hate crime is? And,
Oh.
and when should an incident or crime be referred to the AG's office? the US,
Oh, it's the state agent's office.
sorry, the US Attorney's Office.
Oh, the U.S. Attorney's Office, right.
It may not be that it's in the scope of this policy, and that's fine, I just would like it to be considered.
Yep,
I think that's in the scope of the state's attorney's office, not a.
probably it's gonna be in the state's attorney, that is gonna be the state's attorneys, not the PDs. I think you're right. But it's a good, I want us to, I have it written down, Mark. I want us to come back to that.
I think Mark's question is about how that information gets transferred up the chain
Right.
from the Bennington Police Department. Does that need to be?
And, well, we'll try to, that's part of my question. Let's address that, but let's not address that at the moment. I'm thinking that we still have to come back and look at lines 7 and 8 under the purpose of the policy. So the policy, this policy establishes guidelines for identifying, investigating, and reporting hate crimes or incidents, and for assisting victimized individuals and communities. That one I think we've got. And then it's the next sentence, and whether it's adequate. A swift and strong response by law enforcement can help stabilize. I wanted to put something else in there. Stabilize, strength, I don't know, something, and then calm the community, as well as aid in a victim's recovery. I think you're right. I think the place where I was uncomfortable was, I don't know what we would want to add in terms of,
Right.
it's just a statement, but it is a statement that matters.
Well, so lines 5 and 6 define the purpose perfectly clearly.
Yep.
As far as the purpose goes, that's it.
Uh-huh.
Lines 7 and 8 are there they are explaining why.
Right.
It's the why behind the purpose.
Right, and that's really, you're exactly correct, Mark. And by the way, somebody asked a couple of times ago, why is there a purpose as well as a policy? Well, it's really, and you may see this in statutes whenever if you look at a statute. Almost always nowadays, we're seeing the beginnings of a statute where the purpose of the statute is identified, because it helps you interpret what's in the policy from now on.
Right.
If we know what the purpose is, then we can say, so that's why this is critically important, I think.
Right. The purpose is the goal, and the policy is to achieve or support the goal.
Exactly, Cindy, I think you're exactly right. So I think that we're lines 7 and 8 are very important in helping, in that process when somebody's trying to, remember these are going to be eventually published online in the Bennington PD's website. So it'll be helpful for the community to see what it is the purpose of this policy is. That's why I like the swift and strong response by law enforcement. I think that can be, that's a really helpful statement.
And I like the idea of adding the word strengthen, so it can help stabilize, strengthen, and calm the community.
Strengthen.
Stabilize, strengthen.
Stabilize, I know we're going to put something in there. So after stabilize, there's going to be a comma.
Mhm.
And for right now, let's put the word strengthen in there. There we go. There's going to be another comment right after that.
Yeah, you read the Oxford comma?
I do. I'm a lawyer.
I'm a writer, I like it.
Oh, good. Because when you don't put that comma in, you end up with all kinds of crazy stuff
Yeah.
that you don't really need. Remembering that when it's in red, we can change it. But when it's anything up there, we can change it. So,
Another good word might be support. Strengthen or support.
yeah, strengthen, support. I like support too. I don't think we can, we could probably go too crazy, but
Bruce, I'm wondering if we don't scrap the sentence as it is and rewrite it.
You want to throw that
I
whole
want to
sentence out?
say something like a swift and appropriate response by law enforcement is vital to.
Oh,
Yeah.
stabilize,
Yeah.
strengthen, and support. Okay, yeah, okay, so let's go ahead. I like that. You wanted to?
I agree with Mark. And effective response also would be another good term.
What did Mark
I
say?
said appropriate, but a swift and effective response is.
I like that too, and that makes even, I don't even know, I think that's better than strong because I don't really know what strong means.
Yeah.
Can I
You couldn't pick any kind.
if we can, if, I guess I perceive the rest of that sentence a little bit differently. If we could bring in there somehow, community resilience is really what we want.
Right,
That's really the goal of the effective police response.
okay.
'Cause
So,
you can't tell people, you can't make people be calm.
no, you
You
can't.
can help them be resilient.
Okay, so you can, and we're talking about a resilient community, right? So let's say, if we were to say the following, and this, again, this is, you're gonna humor me for the moment. We won't write anything in, Michelle. Because it's no point in making you do work that you don't need to do. A swift and appropriate, I like effective. And I also like swift. I think, it's easy to be laggy on this one. So, or a swift or rapid and an effective response by law enforcement can help stabilize, strengthen, and support. And Mark, there was the way you said it sounds
Well,
better.
I said it's vital. I mean, that puts it
Okay, yes.
into the
And
passive.
actually,
voice.
that's actually is vital to, oh my, is vital to stabilize, strengthen, and can result, this is not helpful, can result in a more resilient community as well as aid in the victim's recovery. I think as well as aid in the victim's recovery is okay for the moment. So, I didn't say that very well. Shoot.
I mean, I really like the idea of the community resilience.
I do too.
And maybe we just make it straightforward and say swift and effective response by law enforcement, builds, supports, develops, whatever word you want to say, community resilience, as well as aids in the victim's recovery. I mean, I don't know if that works.
That's simpler.
But I don't know if it catches everything that people want it to catch, but I do
But
like
that's what I like
resilience.
that sentence. So, Dan, did you just lose it by saying it, or did you?
No, I think I can call it.
Okay, so it's,
I'm writing it out if you want to.
oh my gracious, we love you dearly. Let's get rid of strong. We're going to do that. Let's say effective. Then Dan, or
Response by law enforcement, and I struggle with whether it's builds, develops, results in whatever. Community resilience, so we can talk about what that right word is.
Yeah.
And as well as aids in victims' recovery. And the rest
why
of
don't
it,
we say builds for this moment?
Vital to, is vital to,
Or is vital to community resilience?
it's vital to something.
I like is vital, but that's the passive voice.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
It is.
builds is the.
I like it too.
is that the right word?
It is at the
Builds or
moment.
develops, yeah.
Cindy's going to help us as the wordsmith. But builds for the moment is it's a good placeholder. So you're going to write in builds, Michelle. And you're going to,
Community resilience.
yeah, we're gonna cross out everything before community. In a moment, yeah. Yep, and now we're going to put in the word resilience. resilience after community. After. Oops. Comma. And then it would be AIDS. AIDS. That's actually a much more active and better sentence than what we have. Can result in, but there can be more, we could do this better, isn't it? This isn't the most perfect sentence.
So, yeah, so one thing that I don't want to lose track of, because for me, in the way that I'm thinking about this, this is a reference for police officers and understanding their goal
Yeah,
and responding to a hate crime.
right,
So one of the important goals originally was keeping the community calm, because it isn't, it's difficult for the victim who's been, but the rest of that particular community will also feel victimized. So
yes,
I think the goal of keeping the community calm, having a visible police response in response to a hate crime is an important goal.
okay,
You know, I'm thinking of further down in the policy where they talk about working with the news media, things like that.
right,
So if we
That
can
would be
find
in
a
the-
way to keep the word
right.
calm in there.
right. Go ahead.
Sorry, the idea of telling a marginalized group that they need to stay calm in the midst of, in the aftermath of a hate crime makes me feel really queasy.
Oh, I don't think it's an instruction to stay calm. I think it's more about having the police officers understand that the victim population will feel threatened and that they want to project that they are protecting and serving that community, not
Okay.
telling them to be calm.
Right,
Does that make sense?
It still, it says that the purpose of our swift response is so that they will just be calm. And that's not the reason that we run the hate crime.
right,
No, I understand.
yeah,
Okay, we don't have to keep it.
I'm wondering if a swift and effective response by law enforcement develops community trust, builds community resilience, as well as aids the victim's recovery.
I like that. I think after community resilience, we could add provide support and resources for victims recovery.
oh, yeah. Because there's a lot in the procedures below that actually talk about that. And that's much more specific than AIDS.
Yes.
So let's see if we can, Mark, you're not gonna lose what you just said before.
I was suggesting that we add develops trust or develops community trust.
Okay, so, a swift and effective, let's see if we can come up with this. This sentence is gonna look very different than what we started, which is good.
That is,
A swift and effective response by law enforcement. What did you just say then? Builds? Or
Develops.
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 Right, okay, after enforcement, you're gonna add the following. Develops,
And I think you could just say trust rather than
Trust.
repeating community over and over.
no, don't get rid of builds.
Okay.
Develops trust, comma, builds community resilience, right, which we have, as well as, now Jamar, this is where we need you.
So I'm thinking after as well as provides support and resources.
Okay, yep, you're listening, that's what I wanted you to do, support and resources for, and then get rid of AIDS in, yep, delete that. How do we feel about that? Yes? I see some nods. Jamar's still thinking about it. That's okay. Please do think about it.
Can
We're not done, so remember, before we ever finish, I'm going to ask us to come back and look at it all so that we think we're good at it. Yes, ma'am.
I, to look like as well as just saying,
Yeah.
Yes, get rid of that.
I don't like that as well as.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
So,
it's just,
Yeah, as well as we don't need. And,
And.
oh, I love it. That's much better. That's a better purpose.
Anything substantively missing, Shamar?
These are, again, we're thinking of the three parts really of the policy. If you go down and look at those three sections of the policy, the first is an investigation incidents. The second is dealing with the victims in the community. And the third is creating or developing a standard system for collecting, analyzing, and reporting out incidents of crime that are in law or are corrected against. And then we use the Vermont statute.
May I suggest that maybe we want to continue going through the rest of the body and then revisit that opening statement?
Yeah,
once
we will, that's the process.
Yeah.
So, for right now, I'm going to say, let's leave purpose and policy and move to definitions.
Okay.
And we're going to do the first few, and at about 2:30, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay?
Okay.
Does that work for everybody? It works for me. I'm going to need to take a break. So, since I'm the chair, I can do that. Okay. So, and I don't have a problem with the footnotes as they are, but we can decide that later. That's and I do have problems with some of the definitions, so but that's okay. Let's talk about bias. Let's see if we can do bias, hate crime, hate incident, and maybe hate group, and then we'll take a break. Bias.
can we just do a copy and paste from the above corrections?
Well, yes, we will do that. A performed negative opinion or attitude toward a group of persons based on their. And then Michelle, at the beginning of, it should actually right after there, it should say actual or perceived, and then it's everything else like from above. You know what I mean? When I said from above, it's that same list. So it's actual, perceived, and it starts with race, color, religion, blah, 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 on line 23, all the way down to identity, gender identity. You don't even have to copy or disability because it's there. So copy that, you can. Yep, and paste it right after perceived. Yep, and then delete everything else after that. Yeah. And you see where that same list happens? Okay. But you see, bias is a performed negative opinion or attitude toward a group of persons based on their, and then it's this Vermont statute.
So, Bruce, I know what they're trying to say there, but it's preformed, right?
It's preformed.
Should it be
Yeah, I don't mean performed, I mean preformed.
But should it be pre-dash? I don't know, it just seems like it's.
I would actually hyphenate that
Yeah.
myself. Yeah,
I
I
don't
would
know if
actually
that- I don't even
put a
know.
hyphen in, yes, right there.
I don't know if that's real, if that's appropriate from an English standpoint, but it definitely,
It
Makes
means
you see the
should
word
say
better.
that, right. I mean, it's speaking. but it's pre-form. It's not per form.
My rule of thumb is it's correct if it makes things more clear.
Okay, I like
And
that.
I think this makes it much more clear.
I
Yeah,
In other
definitely
words,
read
you
it
had,
as
this is an idea that you had.
The unlike
right,
dictionary
right. If it
says,
could be misinterpreted, then use the hyphen to make
the
it more
unlike
clear.
dictionary says no hyphen.
No, I,
That's,
Yeah, I still like the hyphen in it.
It's our document,
Yeah, our language.
that's right.
I think that's what bias is.
Okay. Right.
Hate crime. Can I, lines 35 and 36, that sentence, where it says most states in the District of Columbia, you see that? Right after that should be deleted. Our police don't need to worry about that. All of line 36. And
we can cut and paste after action.
And we can cut and paste all because of the actual and perceived, and again, it's all the same thing again. It's that same list.
Which would change the citation.
Right.
Yes, we will eliminate the second citation.
We don't need to cite the federal code.
Now,
So after actual perceived, you can delete all that down to down to including the footnote.
right,
All that, right?
Yeah.
and the footnote. No, yeah, you don't have to go that far.
Oh, okay.
It's the footnote that you're gonna delete that one too.
There you go. And then you can just copy from above. May already still be in your copy.
Yeah, it probably is. Paste the baby. There we go. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
right.
don't worry.
That's it.
Perfect.
And if we cite anything, it'll be just to the Vermont statute.
Right.
Perfect.
Okay?
That's good.
Good. Ooh,
Making progress.
we are. Hate incident. Yeah, exactly.
Is it break time?
It is break time. We're gonna take a break and be back. We're gonna, since we were so good, we'll be back by 2:30. Gonna give you 10.
So thank you.
We are at a group. A group. Wait a second, or hate incident. Which are we at?
we did these incidents.
We did hate incident, right. Thank you. All right. Okay, so the list, Michelle, God bless you, is exactly, and you may still have that on your copy, right? Yeah, start at hatred toward persons of a, and it should be persons, just start right there. Persons of a, and then after a,
Yeah.
then it would be perceived or actual. Yeah, you could go. Space, and then copy the list. Yeah. And then delete everything. Yeah, including the little 3. And we, when I get it, I may very well put in this statutory reference on each of these, or at least one of these.
So Bruce, I think it doesn't quite read correctly.
Yeah, I don't think it does either.
If it said something based on antipathy, hostility towards persons based on their,
Yes.
I don't know if that works
Persons, it
or
should be
not.
based, well, I think it's almost the same as what we had said before.
Or towards
Or
persons.
because of,
Right, okay.
because of their. It is,
Or-
let's use the same language. what?
Or toward persons of a particular race, color, religion.
Well, you see, the problem is it has to be perceived or actual. We have to have that language in there, that's critical. In other words, you don't have to be,
Right,
if you are perceived to be,
but this is a hate group.
right, and that's, but we're still using the list of identified, or do we have to in this one?
Right.
A hate group. In Vermont, it's a group. Well, let's just ask ourselves, is there anything in that list that Vermont has identified as, is there something that's not there? Can we put, Michelle, put in the word after persons because? And get rid of A. And put in there, as in possessive, yeah. Oh, you know, Mark, I'm trying to get
Well,
what you're trying
I'm
to say.
just wondering, I don't see anywhere in this, the statutes that we have from Vermont that mentions hate groups.
Nope.
No,
I'm wondering now how are hate groups, how is that term used in this policy? Because that might inform how we want to define it.
Right. And we go, it has more to do with the responses.
Doesn't it have to do with like keeping track of
Yep,
certain groups?
it's under community relations and crime prevention, which is letter E of the procedures, as I recall. I'm going under. Okay.
I'm not seeing the
It's
term.
not really there either, although that's, we may, I would say that one of the things that I had under suggestions was when we're talking about, when it's talking about that, in that section, that we include making sure that somebody in the department is keeping track of.
Yeah, so it's under procedures B.
Is that where it is?
Number 2, number little, numeral 1.
Yes. Yep.
that's it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we even need a definition. Do we need
It's an interesting question.
I don't think it's helpful. Have to.
Mhm.
You don't.
I do think it is.
I think it's
I
helpful
do
too.
think it is. I think,
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah,
yeah,
it helps somebody, okay, is this a hate group or not?
yeah. Is this
Yeah.
worth keeping track of?
Remember that we're keeping for the PD,
Yeah.
and I think it is.
I mean, it's something we would want them to do, be aware of a hate group
Right.
in Bennington.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question is, does that definition, as we've amended it, satisfy?
Are you asking, is it broad enough?
I mean, yeah, I guess for that purpose of just having, it being helpful to have a definition.
Is it descriptive enough?
Yeah. Well, in a way, that's,
There are, under the other definitions, there are examples. Do you want to include any examples?
Let me go move down to 2. So that definition actually came from the Matthew Shepard's Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which is a U.S. statute.
For a hate group?
No, never mind. It came, oh, no, it just came as an example from the Southern Poverty Law Center. I would want it to include at least everything that's in the Vermont statute. And so, for instance, service in the U.S. Armed Forces is not in any federal statute, not in any other state statute that I know. But it is a protected group within the Vermont statutes because of our experience of people coming back after Vietnam. That's why that's there.
Makes sense.
Yep, for people my age it does.
I mean, I'm satisfied enough with it. I'm not so dissatisfied that I feel it.
Yep, can we move to race? Because I think I'm much more worried about terms such as race, gender, and gender identity. Those are the 3 that I had marked. I'm really not happy with this particular definition of race,
Okay.
partly because it focuses so much on biological or genetically transmitted traits.
Right. And we're focusing more on someone's perception of you rather than,
Let me give you an example I went to Merriam-Webster just to see, which I have to, occasionally I like these. Race. Any one of the groups that humans are often divided into based on physical traits regarded as common among people or of shared ancestry. Let me say that again. Any one of the groups that humans are often divided into based on physical traits regarded as common among people with shared ancestry.
yeah, I like that.
Because it's a social construct. Race is a social construct, not a biological one.
Right.
What
Right.
really ticked me off about this one is that it seemed to imply some biological construct,
Right.
that it's a real thing.
So
It is a real thing, but it's social.
Right. It's a social division.
Right.
And
So-
people can misclassify, you
Mhm.
know,
Exactly. And again,
Kind of
it's perceived, it's perception.
mhm.
So if we were to write down the following, and I will actually, when it comes back to me, I'll put in the citation, but right after race. Right after race on line 6. Yep. Write the following and see if and then it'll be easier for everybody to see once it's there. Any one of the groups that humans are often divided into based on physical traits yeah, that's right, regarded as common among people of shared ancestry.
Regardless of
By
how.
common among people of shared ancestry. Period. That's Merriam-Webster's definition.
Should that anyone be any space one? Or is it?
Yes, it should be. Thank you. Intuition is one word, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
What do you think, folks?
I like it better.
Yeah, what the whole thing.
Yeah, I think the other thing can be just deleted.
Yep.
Do we need the examples?
No.
I don't think so either, but it's just
No.
sure everybody agrees. Okay.
All the way down to whites.
To here?
Just keep going.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
all the way there.
Perfect.
Yep, delete. I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
I found that to be a more helpful definition.
Agreed.
Interestingly, yeah, go ahead.
I'm struggling with the word one of all things.
Well, it's because it's a race. So the race,
It doesn't preclude someone belonging to more than one race.
no. So I can be biracial, and I would be perceived as belonging to, in that case, any of the groups of humans, that any one of the groups I'm part of too. That, I understand people can be biracial. They can be,
also be believed by others to be
right,
two.
right.
So,
I'm with you.
it's minor.
Yeah, I don't know how to get around that. If I knew how to get around that, but don't lose it, because it might come to you tonight and you'll know. You know, sometimes I get an idea at 3 in the morning. Okay, shall we move on to ethnic group?
Sure.
What the heck, right? What's the worst thing that could happen?
We have to go down.
Yeah. Well, that's all right.
We can.
The nice part about a computer is it's so easy to fix.
Well, for starters, our list does not include ethnic groups.
I know. But their list did? Did their list always say
Their list included ethnicity.
ethnicity? Right.
I like,
And,
out of the two, I like ethnic group better than ethnicity.
yeah.
Again, it's,
Appropriate.
it is more, I agree, I think it's more appropriate.
Which is more, say that again?
Ethnic group is more
I agree.
appropriate.
I don't have a yeah. Can we go back up to one of our lists?
Our list includes national origin and ancestry.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Vermont. You know what? So, I am Scottish by ethnic group. My middle name is Campbell. So, I think this is how we would define ourselves, the Scots,
By
right?
ethnic group.
As an ethnic group. Yeah, we're
Right.
a group of persons. We identify with each other through a common heritage, playing very loud music on funky instruments,
Right.
often consisting of a shared language, yeah. Culture, you could say, and that includes foods, really disgusting foods, by the way, and or idiom.
You said it.
I said it, but if you have to make oatmeal in a cheap stomach, that's,
Yeah.
can I just tell you, that's not a great idea. Yeah, whether we need it in there or not, I think it's helpful to be there. I think it's helpful to be there. I know that,
Again, with clarity, I think it adds clarity, so.
I think it adds clarity. I think there are worse offenders down below.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, do we then have to go on and define national origin and ancestry?
No, I think that this includes it. We could say that stresses a common ancestry / or even the word or national or nation of origin.
I would prefer the word or over a slash.
Yeah, I don't like
I don't
slashes
like
either.
slash.
can we, after the word ancestry on line, we're just gonna look at this. On line 14, after the word ancestry, put the word or, nation of origin. And I don't you hate it when I hated that job like crazy. And you can clean it up if you like.
Wouldn't it be national origin, since that's the term that we used earlier?
Did we use that earlier?
Well, that's on our list.
Oh, it's on our list, so let's use that.
National origin.
Yep.
I mean, that connects this,
Yep.
Yep.
this
No,
definition
that's
of
better.
ethnic
Yep.
group to our
Yep.
list of.
There we go.
Otherwise, it's kind of a weird
Yep,
problem.
that makes sense. Everybody okay with that? Yep. Good. Religious group. Interesting. I argued this one long and hard, and I know. I pondered this one and I thought to myself, oh, Lordy, I don't know. It's all true.
Yeah, but
Okay. Can, actually the examples, I think, let's talk about whether we need examples. And I would like, if we're gonna do examples, then we ought to be using examples that are across the board civil, not subsets. So, since we've got Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, those are all world religions. Catholic and Protestant are two versions of a single religion, not.
yeah, but they are separate religious groups.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, they are, but that's
Catholics are targeted differently than
probably different than Protestants. True.
we're dealing with perception.
So how, is that why we're dividing it that way? I'm not sure that we need an example. Do we need examples?
I
You
was
need-
wondering that too. I don't necessarily think we do.
Dan, does the police department need an example of religious groups?
I feel
I
like
mean,
this,
sometimes it helps
Does
if you come into a situation and you're reading through to see if something fits and you read it right in the example, well, I just saw that
oh,
a
yeah.
Catholic person had a problem with a Jewish person and I don't have to think about it since it's right there in black and white
Right.
examples.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes
I mean,
sense.
it doesn't hurt for it to be there and it makes things more black and white
I
if a
guess-
situation were to
Yes,
arise.
okay.
I guess my feeling about this one is while it's not the greatest definition, it's not so broken
Yeah,
that it needs a lot of fixing.
yeah. We're great.
I feel like if we're gonna have an example of religious groups, we should have examples of ethnic groups and regional groups and, I mean, it just,
Yeah, I was thinking of that too.
and there's not like, those are the only ones, so no matter what happens, the police are gonna have to think about,
Right.
is religion involved in this, or is ethnicity involved in this? So it's.
And we would also want to say, examples include, but are not limited to,
Right.
Mm.
right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, the officer was saying that it is helpful to have a list in the description.
Yeah,
so
not, the
maybe
purpose
one
of this is to
list
be
in all
helpful.
the
I
descriptions.
mean, you definitely don't need to list every single one.
No,
No,
I don't think there's enough paper in the world to do that.
yeah. But just
So-
having some examples.
so let's at least, for the moment, we'll keep Catholic and Protestant, I get the reason why. Let's use examples include, on line 17, Michelle, after the word include, but are not limited to. and then colon. Yeah. Yeah. And,
Would you recommend a Christian person?
you know, if anything,
Just because I'm irritated.
pardon me?
Just 'cause it's
Which is irritating, that Protestant is even there?
irritating.
Catholic and Protestant, why do Christians get two and everyone else gets one?
Yeah, I would just, well, that's because the general category is Christian.
Yes. But again,
Yeah.
Catholics are targeted differently than Protestants.
Protestants aren't targeted, are they?
Not very much in this country, no. But
Not that I can think of.
Catholics have been the target.
So if I was going to do this, I would either say Christian or Catholic. I don't worry about Protestants getting targeted, quite frankly, and I'm a Protestant, so
But, yeah, I mean, you are just, at the same time, we're just giving examples of what an ethnic.
what a religious group is. So I would say Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, and atheist.
That's good to
And
know.
that's the way I would put it. Dan, would that, you know,
Yeah, I mean, I get his point where
okay,
I do know that the different subsections of Christianity
right,
do get targeted differently than all.
they do, and
I mean,
that's the
I'm not
part.
particular on what examples are in there, I'm just,
Yep,
I
and examples
myself
are
like to
good.
have examples in there
Yep.
just to reference.
The reason I think at least the list is good is because it does include Sikhs. And as you may have read in your work, that since 2001, since 9/11, Sikhs have really, in addition to Muslims, have been really. And by the way, I should say Islam, not Muslim.
Yeah.
Yes.
The name of the religion is Islam. Its adherents are Muslims. ISLAM. That's right.
Take out.
Islamic, take out Muslim, yeah.
So I've got a definition here
Or,
for religious group
okay,
as a set of individuals whose identity as such is distinctive in terms of common religious creed, beliefs, doctrines, practices, or rituals.
I like that one better.
That's a, yeah.
Where did that come from?
I'm getting it off of a Cornell University law.
Oh, you're getting it, yeah,
From,
yep.
it looks like the US code.
It may be, but it's from the Cornell site?
Yeah, but it says sources, US code.
Yeah.
18, section 1093.
Right, say that again. 18 USC 1093?
Yeah, 18 USC, section 1093.
Perfect. Oh. All right,
And they actually have
that's the US code.
ethnic groups and.
Okay. Let's try that. Just read it again and tell me, folks, what you think. The U.S. Code defines religious group. Who the heck knew?
A set of individuals,
Don't write anything yet, Michelle.
a set of individuals whose identity as such is distinctive in terms of common religious creed, beliefs, doctrines, practices, or rituals.
And you don't get into the existence or non-existence of a supreme being, which I would be happy to avoid.
But that definition also leaves out atheists.
No, it doesn't. Nope. Now, if you talk to Madeline Murray O'Hare, which you can't do now, but
Because it's defined, the group is distinctive in terms of their common creed, beliefs,
That's it.
doctrines, practices, or rituals.
so it's an or. That's why it's, so Wicca would be in there, any number of things.
And again, it's got nothing to do with the existence or not of a supreme being.
Yeah. I think,
As a,
can we try that one? Okay. Here we go. After the word A, leave that.
I think we can still keep group rather than a set of individuals.
Okay, so a group of persons, right?
Yep, a group of persons whose identity as such is distinctive in terms of common religious creed, comma, beliefs, comma, doctrines, comma, practices, comma, or rituals,
Period.
period.
It's actually simpler too. Okay?
Yeah.
Cross every, how do people feel about that? It's good. I think it is good.
It is good, it's better.
Yeah, it's better.
And we can at least delete down to the word examples.
Yeah, let's delete everything down to word examples, Michelle. And get rid of that notion of having to worry about whether they agree or whatever. Well, okay. Substantially better. Thank you, Mark, for sticking into that. That's good. Okay. Sexual orientation. Remembering that this was all written several years ago. I'm not happy with it, but well, how would you describe it? I didn't find any easily obtainable.
Well, honestly, it delineates that it's attraction that is physical, romantic, and or emotional, which is a pretty good definition.
Okay.
That part.
To me, that wasn't the hard part. To me, it was members of. I would have just said to some other human being, but maybe
I'm not sure that's a specific enough definition.
that may not be. Is this fully inclusive? I know the examples seem to be. Although I would say they're not as inclusive as I would like it.
No, well, that list goes, yes.
Okay.
There are several more that I would like to see.
Right.
We could go on and on.
But we could at least say include but are not limited to, right?
Yeah.
So again,
We're just providing
Michelle?
a few examples, it's not meant to be an exhaustive.
Examples include, and then add again, but are not limited to,
So the
colon.
sexual orientation also includes a person's non-attraction.
Right.
Or lack thereof.
Or, yeah, person's physical, romantic, or emotional attraction, or non-attraction, or absence of attraction. Did you say that, attraction or absence thereof?
I don't know if we need it, and I feel like it might.
I think we're gonna get into more,
clarity.
yeah,
It doesn't feel necessary.
Yeah, it doesn't feel necessary.
okay.
It's
I
important.
think we're gonna get into other issues around gender and identity, gender identity.
Mhm.
Maybe asexual as, instead of heterosexual as an example. would
Oh.
Give that,
Give, instead of, oh, okay, are not limited to homosexual, bisexual, and
asexual.
asexual. Yeah. I mean, I, to one degree, wonder whether we need to worry about the dominant culture in making it an example. Like saying Protestants, we need to know what Protestants are because they're obviously
Right.
targeted and they're not. Do we need, for example, when we're talking about, again, when we got rid of whites as a race?
But
I
when
thought
you're
it was
dealing
happy.
with, if you're you're dealing with hate crimes and you've got a situation where typically the perpetrator of the crime is of a different, or they perceive themselves to be of a different sexual orientation or race or.
Sexual orientation, right.
That I'm just wondering,
So that's why
if you have examples, you need to include examples that cover both your perpetrators and your.
I get it, thank you, that's helpful.
Um,
Then I think those three are fine.
So sexual orientation, Oxford says, is a person's identity in relation to the gender or genders to which they are sexually attracted.
Ooh, that's much better.
Although it limits it to, I mean, it doesn't talk about romantic and or physical.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Read it again and then see.
So- The person's identity in relation to the gender or genders to which they are sexually attracted. But we could adapt that to which they are.
Yeah, again, I think that to which they are.
Yeah,
That's kind of,
a person's
Right,
identity
right,
in relation to sexual orientation.
person's physical or mental, you know, affected with respect to. Can we leave that just the way it is?
I like it, I think it's okay.
That's, yeah, I don't, we don't have to seek perfection so much.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it did not offend me as a gay person the first time.
Okay.
So,
Well, we all have some. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about gender and gender identity.
Our list uses sex instead of gender, so maybe we'll just say gender, or, it's weird.
well, yeah, and
The state definition says sex, not gender.
Yeah.
So can we replace gender with sex? There's no point in defining something that's not.
Yeah.
Our list doesn't include.
Maybe our
It includes gender identity, but it doesn't say gender. It includes sex.
yeah, it's weird.
And the idea that it is used to denote whether an individual is male or female strikes me as just antiquated.
well, so there are ways in which some would say gender is a social construct,
Yeah,
that sex is the
Right.
but
physical biological characteristics.
right.
Um,
So one of the ways you could say this is gender is used synonymously with sex to denote whether an individual is perceived or self-perceived as male or female. Because that, to me, I mean, if we're saying sex is the biological identification, even that is not, unless one is talking about DNA, and even that is somewhat correlated now, we know. That's not overwhelmingly helpful and not accurate.
Right, but we, yeah, I mean, we want to protect women, right? This is why sex is listed separately from gender identity.
Yes, and maybe we just need to identify or have sex as one of the definitions.
I think if we're gonna, because that's in our list.
That's in our list, and so we need
If
to
we're gonna
have-
define something, it should be on
Right.
the list.
It's in our list, and therefore we should, so can we add, well, let's try adding a definition. Can we add a definition after sexual orientation? So we're gonna add a new I. After, on line 23, you're gonna just tab, on line 23, at the very beginning of 23. All the way over, right there. You're now going to what's your word that you use? Return, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. That's what it was when it was a typewriter, right? Yeah. So let's put in sex and define it. Well, I think it makes more sense to do it that way.
No, it absolutely does make more sense to do it that way than I would say strike gender, because.
No, I actually think we need to do both.
You shouldn't use, well, we shouldn't use gender as synonymous with sex.
It's not.
But there's two definitions.
So we're gonna go here,
Perfect.
and maybe we do decide that we delete gender and just keep gender identity. That may be what we end up doing.
Yeah.
But for now, can we define sex?
So,
So that what we're talking about is the protecting, the protected class of persons based on their perceived sex. And yes, primarily we're talking about hate crimes against women, people who are perceived as women. Because that's, although there can be, and I've only seen one instance of a hate crime against someone because of their maleness. But, so the more common is women.
Right.
So, we have about 50 minutes on our time frame, so can we, does anybody want to look something up?
I have some clinical definitions here, I'm not sure how helpful they are. Oxford, either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
I was thinking maybe like the perception of someone's, well, gender, I can't think of a better word, based on physical
Or-
characteristics.
Yeah, I think you can think about it as the two categories of male and female. That's generally the perceived.
Right.
Say that again, but I think I want to get to where you were.
Either of the two main categories, parenthetically, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions.
And instead of reproductive functions, I think I just wanted to say physical characteristics and add the word perceived, because I think sometimes people misperceive it.
I like that better.
But, yeah.
Yeah, remember, in the context that we're talking about, this is a crime
Right.
that a person,
Okay.
that it could be an assault that is, I'll give you an example from my experience. A guy in New York years ago got HIV/AIDS from a woman. He perceives. So he now is out to infect every woman he can meet. And so I would consider that not, and in fact, the prosecutor did, consider that not just rape,
But a hate crime.
but a hate crime. So it was subject to the hate crime enhancement. And he was attacking people based on his perception that they were a woman.
Right.
And one of the persons he attacked was a transvestite and still attempted. So that was so whatever you ended up saying, I think that's
Right.
within
that's what
this
I was
context
thinking.
makes more sense
Right.
than reproductive organs.
Bruce, I think I'd have to disagree because we talked about in the list perceived sex, actual perceived.
Right.
So I have to go
Actual
to put
perceived.
perceived in the definition of sex because it's perceived.
I get that, so I'm just thinking, just not necessarily, it doesn't, we perceive them not based on sexual reproductive organs, but perceiving them as a woman, right? Based on physical characteristics.
Well, I don't have any problem with that,
Right.
I just don't think we want to say.
No, I don't want to say
perceived
perceived in this either.
Yeah,
So, can we write something down and see what we think? We can always fix it.
All right, so we'll start with.
So we'll start with this and then
So
go.
again, this is from the Oxford
Yep.
Dictionary.
I may come back to you for these.
Either of the two main categories
Write that down, Michelle.
Either
Of the two main categories,
male and female,
main, not names, but main.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. This is not, that sounds very much like it.
and we're talking through masks, so.
Yeah,
I know, main categories, yeah.
yeah,
This has parentheses, but I'm going to suggest maybe commas instead.
yep,
Comma, male and female, comma. Into which humans, I think we can strike in most other living things.
yeah,
Into which humans are divided on the basis of their,
physical characteristics.
I don't,
Yeah, that's what I was on the basis
that
of
seems
it.
really not specific enough.
Okay.
What physical characteristics?
And
yeah.
it's THEIR.
And
That's okay.
All right, well, what did your sentence
this
say?
says reproductive functions.
Reproductive function. That to me is too clinical for this.
Yeah,
That's why I was
So
saying
Dan, what do you think? What do you,
physical characteristics.
based on their,
Physical characteristics, I think,
I know.
I know it seems too vague to me.
way too inexact for me as a
Right.
definition.
and you could say sexual
You
characteristics.
could go
but then-
physical appearance.
Mm,
Well, remember, what are we talking about? Some guy, some person attacks someone because of their sex. What are they going on? And I understand appearance is very close to perceived
Yeah, that's
on the basis of their
Physical appearance is what comes to mind.
physical appearance is what I would say.
I mean, the other one is reproductive function.
Yeah,
Which seems clinical and imprecise for this.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
but when you're trying to define it in terms of away from gender, that specificity and that it is clinical, but that
Mhm.
specificity is actually helpful.
All right, then let's use it because we want to keep moving.
yeah. So let's try their sexual, what? Their
Their reproductive functions.
reproductive,
I mean, some would definitely say organs or structures, I mean, that's even more clinical.
yeah, functions.
Functions are more.
But I mean, let's get real, I mean, it's based on genitalia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
Right,
And, I know that this is a policy document, but at the same time, it's a public-facing document.
yeah,
I'm trying to think of how a trans person would read this.
yeah,
And if we,
that's what I was,
right, I mean, the other thing here is that
so for example,
there's actually, while male and female are the main categories, there is also intersex,
yeah,
which, if we're trying to be inclusive in our definitions.
well, I think we need to some degree. I want us to come back, can we come back to that?
Yeah.
And, I can give it some more thought and.
Yeah, we got time. For the moment, do you want to cross off gender completely?
Yeah.
Yes, let's do that then. Line 25 goes away, including, yeah, all the way across.
Right.
Yeah.
I think gender identity covers what gender covers, so there's no need.
Yeah, I
to
think
say it
so.
twice.
So,
So, right away, I would change, this internal sense of gender may be different from,
Yeah,
instead of physical gender at birth, I would say sex assigned at birth.
yes. So, it's cross off physical gender. And type in sex assigned.
Yeah,
That's better.
Um, The problem with the first clause is that non-binary people do not consider themselves to be a combination of both.
Right. Could we say, being male, female, cross off or, a combination of both, or non-binary? Art, what do you think? Could you just add non-binary? We're trying to be helpful to the vetting committee.
I mean, I think you can just add non-binary and take away,
Or a combination of both.
yeah, take away combination of both and just
Or
add
non, you
non-binary.
can say male, female, or non-binary, non-binary.
Yeah, because I think that covers everything.
Yeah, I think that's.
I think you're right, that's right. Probably a combination of both we don't need. Or, so cross off a combination of, start with A, yeah. Cross that off. Add non-binary right there.
And that is hyphen.
That is hyphenated, N-O-N hyphen. You got it. That's better. Yep,
I like,
I'm going to be the
okay.
ignorant person in the room and say that I'd have a really tough time defining what non-binary means, and I think a lot of people might.
Yep.
So
One definition I read was a person says being male, female, some combination of male and female, or neither male
yeah,
or
and
female.
that's how the definitions read.
Or neither male or female.
I mean,
That's another way
you
of
could
using
say
it.
that, male, female,
Some combination of male or female, or neither male nor female.
This may be a one place where it's used with examples.
Well, what if we said instead of, I mean, would, I did not get a chance to ask this question to one person I know. So, what if we did say, and in turn, a sense, let me try this again. Being male, female, some combination of male and female, or neither male nor female.
I think I can make it simpler. A person's internal sense of being male, female, neither, or some combination thereof.
Oh. How's that?
Male, female, neither, or some combination
Okay,
thereof.
don't worry about even crossing that out yet, Michelle. After female, write neither, comma, or some combination thereof. Period. And then cross off everything else up to the semicolon. Good. No, we want to keep the
It
semicolon.
just has,
They're up, so we want, the semicolon needs to be there.
There, yeah.
Perfect. There is a period after they're up that you want to get rid of too. That's it. You don't need even the comma there. Yes, okay. Do you have a semicolon after they're up? Is that what you just did? Okay. I like it. And actually, that could easily be 2 sentences and we'd be just as happy.
Yep.
So Michelle, if you want to make that 2 sentences, that makes just as much
So
sense.
after there, a period and then.
Yeah. Some days when we get fancy, we just drive ourselves crazy.
Yeah.
Perfect. Love it. Thank
It's
you.
much more understandable to most.
That makes much more sense. Dan, does it make much more sense to you? Good. Gotta have it that way. Okay.
So disability is already defined in our list.
Yes, well, it's been defined in statute. So my suggestion is we go back, I have that somewhere, but I don't have it with me. I was just looking for it. The definition as in the statute, and I will just put it there. We'll use the statutory definition from the Vermont statute.
All right, so do you need to make a note for yourself that you need to go
I
back?
have that note already written.
Yeah.
Mine right here, because otherwise I will forget.
Yeah,
Yes, no, it's right there.
all right.
It's, and
So we can move past that one?
yes, we can go now. Ladies and gents, just so we're there. So we and Cindy were not here when I started. I do want us to just quickly look through procedures in case you have questions or comments. But procedures are really the job of the chief,
Okay.
because the chief is supposed to work on procedures that are in keeping with our statement of policy, our statement of purpose, and the definitions we just created.
Okay,
Does that all make sense?
it does.
So, does anybody have, let me just ask that question, any questions regarding the procedures under, and I would say specifically regarding such things as making sure that, I think it does talk a lot about reporting in the procedures, and I think that's critical.
Yep.
And we all know that happens. We will put in under the procedures, or I will put in, or we'll put in even under the stuff above, the citation to the Vermont State Attorney General's office on incidents, not just crimes, but reporting incidents, so that we know that we're going to do that. But are there other comments? Yes, Grace, you had it.
I was actually wondering if the reporting should be one of the goals.
Well, it's in
It's in the purpose, but it's not under the goals of the procedures.
I have a suggestion, but it's not up to me to write procedure. But
Right,
I did come with a
Did you have,
suggestion.
sure.
And it's simply this, that at the end of the entire investigation into a hate incident, I would suggest that the police department do an internal review of the incident with the policy to see if they achieve their goal and how they could do better next time. And that would just be a suggestion.
And that would be, again, that's something that we can type in as anything that comes in here under procedures. And so let's just use that as an example and see how we might, is there a way that we can change even the lettering, the color? Dan?
There probably is.
Okay, let's not worry
I
about
will
it.
not.
Let's not worry about it right
Pretend to go
now. Let's not worry about that right now. If we were saying, because they've got all the stuff about different responsibilities, and there's the data collection and reporting section under, in line 21 of page, whatever it So you're thinking about a G, a section G.
Yeah, I am thinking about a section G. It's something that's commonly done in business settings where if you
Right.
done a task in your business, you go back and review your performance and grade yourself and see how you could align better with your business the next time this happens.
So, let's put this in, and we'll just type suggested G.
Where are we at page?
Right where you are right now.
Before the acknowledgement.
Before the acknowledgement, we
That's
wait.
good.
Yeah, right there. A suggested G.
Just G. Okay.
Suggested.
And then parentheses.
Yep. So, and then so this is just, so the chief gets this, so the chief knows what we're doing, and Dan will talk about it as well. And can you just,
Sure. So, and you can call it a postmortem, but that's a
Right.
technical term.
that's us.
So,
We won't,
so I'm
let's
gonna
not talk about it yet.
call it an incident review. So if there's been a hate crime or an incident, and the police have done their investigation and their recordings and all the rest, I would suggest that they perform an internal review with their own policy and basically grade themselves on their performance and see how they felt they performed in accordance with their policy and if there's anything they can do better the next time there's an incident.
Okay, so
a
our
review
suggested G is a post-incident review.
Yeah, I like that.
And then skip down the line and indent it and say something like this. And then you'll correct me.
Yeah.
Or we'll see what we come up with.
Yeah, you can come up with that.
After a hate crime or incident, the BPD,
Just read it.
yeah, will conduct a review of their actions and the results with the policy in mind. The chief's gonna know what we need, but we can say this probably better. Right. In order to see how well they achieve the goals of the policy, or something like that. I think that's helpful. I mean, and it's a suggestion again to the chief, not,
Right, if he sets his own policy, this is just a policy.
this is a procedure that would be, we're gonna suggest an added step. So you can look, and I'm sure that you probably do this anyway, probably informally. This is suggesting, just keeping that in our heads. It's what every good organization does.
Yeah.
How well did we do that? Wow, we could have done this better.
Right, yeah, I think it is something every organization does, but having it a little bit formalized just reminds everyone to do it. I think it's
Yeah,
helpful.
no, I agree, yep. And Grace, I want to come back to the comment you made, because I lost it. That's helpful. Grace, you had made another, you wanted to go back to goals. Let's go back to goals, because there is a section on reporting. There's a section F, but you're right, the goal. Let's look at the goals of the procedure.
What was the suggestion?
Reporting.
So we talk, it does say evidence related to all its hate and shall be thoroughly documented. That's a goal.
Yeah,
Can I say just and reported?
Yeah, if you just add reported.
And reporting there?
yeah, after documented.
I really think it's important to have goals in there.
No, it makes sense.
because
No,
we
it
makes
really-
Yes, no, I think this is, that's an improvement, and I think the chief will take that in and say, yeah, exactly. I don't think that's a problem. Yes, sir. Are there other places in the procedures? Because we're going to spend the next, say, 20 minutes or so looking back at what we've done, starting with the first.
Just a general comment then.
Yeah.
You know, the section, B, C, and D, I don't have a whole lot to say about, because that's how you can help police do their jobs. So,
Yep.
law enforcement, but community relations,
Yes.
this is an especially important section.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure that I see that reflected in the goals. I don't know if it needs to be listed in the goals that, we're attempting to move more towards community policing.
Mm-hmm.
And so communication and transparency with the community to the extent that that's possible during an investigation is vital.
Yep.
Also vital is, I think one of the, number 7, line 15 on page 4 says establish liaisons with formal community-based organizations and leaders to mobilize resources.
Yep.
This is important before any incident happens, right? Those relationships should be, and I'm not saying,
No, you're
I'm
not.
not trying to rewrite this at all.
No.
I'm just making a comment. Again, that all of this is part of our attempts to reform to be more towards a community policing model.
Right.
And maybe the goal should reflect that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also to be proactive in this sense, because one of the whole points of doing this is to prevent another hate crime or incident from happening.
And worse, that when something does happen, because there's going to be another hate crime.
Yeah.
Or at least a hate incident. And
Yeah.
that when something happens, there's already, the trust is being built in the community that they know and they trust that the police department is going to investigate it and take it seriously. And this policy is a small piece of establishing that trust.
Mm-hmm. I like, yeah.
And so, my comment is just more broadly
Right.
towards those dealing with this section.
Right. I think your comments are exactly.
I would be, I guess I'm saying, I would be, upset's not the right word, but I would be disappointed to see sections removed under letter E.
Yep. Well, and thank you for raising it because I think it's important. One of the places there will be several different places of accountability, let's put it that way. When the chief gets this, and the state's attorney sees it, and the town's attorney sees it, they'll be focused, the two attorneys will be focusing, well, I think the state's attorney is going to focus on the whole thing, as does the trial attorney. But I think, that when it comes back to the select board is also going to see the whole thing. And that means that the community is going to see the whole thing. So it will be, I think it's really helpful to remind everybody that, what the police do, a lot of what the police do and can do is in the area of community relations and prevention. And that's really what these sections are, and they're intended for us to be thinking forward and being proactive. And I think that's what these, so that the police are not always seen as being just reactive. And I fully expect to see much of this procedure here just the way it's written. That's and we will, when we pass a policy, when the select board passes a policy, it should be essentially those first three parts of this document. We will also be seeking how the procedures fill in the activity that the police department will undertake in relationship to that policy. So that there will be that, and you will have the opportunity. Anybody will have the opportunity to join in and see what's there. You will especially, all four of you will know particularly what was there to begin with, and they'll have the opportunity to ask, what happened to, if anything does happen. I don't perceive that it will, but you have that opportunity in those meetings. Because it's not going to just jump to the select board and we adopt it. Come to the select board, we accept it, we may discuss it a bit, but then it's not going to be adopted at least for another 2 weeks. So there's that time of public comment. So there is always that accountability.
So
Yes.
is there a way that we can strengthen the wording around community relations in the goals portion?
Or maybe even in the policy section.
Yeah, so one of the things.
So let's talk about the section that we really can affect. So if we can, I got 20 minutes left on our time frame that we've all agreed to. That doesn't mean that we can't agree to go a little bit over, but we can at least agree all the way to the top of the document. Page 1. There we are. So, this policy establishes guidelines for identifying, investigating, and reporting hate crimes or incidents, and for assisting victimized individuals and communities. A swift and effective response by law enforcement develops trust, builds community resilience, and provides support and resources for a victim's recovery. That's the purpose that we set. Is that as inclusive as we need it to be?
I'm happy with it.
Okay?
Yeah, I think we
Okay.
it is a policy around the investigation and reporting of hate crimes.
Right.
So it's not a policy on community policing.
No.
But I think that purpose statement is reflective of the broader goals of community policing.
Yeah. So then if we can, let's look at the actual policy statements, the 3 paragraphs that we created, or that were created there, because, again, this is the meat of the work. Any acts, or I'm going to read it just so that folks will be able, any acts or threats of violence, property damage, harassment, intimidation, or other crimes motivated by hate or bias are viewed very seriously by the Bennington Police Department and will be given high priority. The Bennington Police Department shall employ all necessary resources and vigorous law enforcement action to identify and arrest hate crime perpetrators. That's part 1. Also, recognizing the particular fears and distress typically suffered by victims, the potential for reprisal and escalation of violence, and the far-reaching negative consequences of these crimes on the community, the Bennington PD shall be mindful of and responsive to the security concerns of victims, their families, and impacted community members. The Bennington PD shall develop a standard system for collecting, analyzing, and reporting incidents of crime that are, in whole or in part, directed against individuals because of actual or perceived race, color, religion, national origin, sex, ancestry, age, service in the U.S. Armed Forces, disability as defined by DSA 495D, subsection 5, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Is that whole policy as inclusive as we want it to be?
Yeah, I think so. I think where I'm a little bit stuck, I think this is more in the actual procedures, is that there's a bit about the police department creating liaison relationships, but it's vague. And I think the liaison relationships need to be more specifically spelled out to say that the police need liaisons within targeted minority groups that are subject to hate incidences and hate crimes. I don't know how to put it into the policy, but I know that in a very real sense, there is sort of a disconnect between the police department and marginalized communities that are more often the target of crimes.
Okay.
I don't know how to say that, I don't know how to put it in the policy. Or in the description, it's there.
Right. You're right that it's in the section that Mark had identified. Remembering, I would agree with you, I think it's important.
Even for the identifying and to have those liaisons to even know that something happened, to have
Right.
someone to talk to about what happened.
Right.
Right, well, it goes beyond the hate crimes. It goes beyond just the purview of this policy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that it needs to be
I think it's
in
probably,
this policy,
Yeah.
but those relationships need to be built
Mm-hmm.
and maintained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been looking for how to address it in the documentation, but that's a big part of why I'm
right.
And the problem may be that it doesn't fit within this document.
here. Yeah.
It might not fit within this document, but I'm suspecting that when we're going to come up against this same question in a lot of, when we're talking about police response to domestic violence, when we're talking about police response to people in mental health crises,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about it. So one of the places where community policing, Dave, maybe you'll correct me if I get this wrong, one of the places where community policing is really trying to push is to try to develop, whether it's official liaisons or at least connections to various groups within the community in such a way that you can call on them or they can call on you in times of real need, so that nobody's acting as a sort of one-up
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Mhm.
So that, and we make this, I'm not sure that this is the policy. I mean, yes, it does say it in the procedure, but I'm perfectly happy to see what the chief does with that part, so long as we are all watching.
Mhm.
But also to say somewhere in some policy document, it might be in the construction of, or the conversation around what does community policing look like in Bennett.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be an opportunity for us, the community, to have that conversation.
Okay, well, I mean, so
That may be the place where that ends up happening, and I'm
Right.
hoping that you all will think seriously about, would you participate in that kind of a
Yeah.
conversation? What does community policing look like here in Bennington?
Right, I've been hoping that there would be more than just this policy review.
Oh, heck yeah.
To this.
Yes, Cindy, thank you for that. Yes, there is.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
there is.
and so my answer is yes, I would be.
Good. Keep your eyes and ears peeled. We'll try to spread the word out as best we can. The policy piece is important, but it's not the only thing that drives it's not the only place that things should be written. I mean, you've probably seen the boards up where we've been asking questions. Hopefully you've been participating in that. If you haven't, let me encourage you to do that.
Yeah.
But also, there'll be other opportunities where we want, and I think it's been my perception that the PD has been very open to those conversations. That's been my sense.
Yeah, same. So, yeah, so if that's a little bit outside of the scope, I just didn't want to leave this meeting without expressing it.
And thank you. I think I will make sure that it's in my notes as well. But it's been one of the things that I've been trying to think of. How does it fit? I saw it here in the procedures part. But I want to leave that for the chief to see it. And to some degree, the idea of creating liaisons with all these groups, I think it's going to be a little bit more informal here because we're smaller.
Yeah.
If this was the Albany PD and you had
Right.
300 officers, we have 20, no, we have 25.
Right.
So you can't have, there's a number of issues. But we did have people who become experts in particular little groups of people. So, and it's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other issues around this policy, are you feeling like we've done a good afternoon's
I
work?
have a question.
You have a question?
Is there anything about this that does not apply to online hate speech or harassment?
It does not apply. So let me ask a question. Would this apply to, and does the statute apply to online, let's take a look at the very top. Threats of violence, property damage, harassment, and intimidation, or other crimes motivated by hate or bias.
All of those can be perpetrated online.
All of those could be perpetrated online, yes.
Over the phone, online, in person.
Yep.
And
I would say the answer is this does not distinguish between online and offline because that's not a distinction that matters. People may suggest that threats are one thing, or just written threats, but threats online, and I'll give you the floor, but threats online become an act in and of themselves. Go ahead, Ian.
So Grace, just so you do understand it, in Vermont, hate crimes and stuff like that are an enhancement to an original crime. So the things online and threats and stuff like that, the easiest way to correlate that would be to a disorderly conduct crime. And if it was a motivated crime due to everything that we've been talking about today, then that would meet the criteria. And there are crimes that you can commit online by threatening people, sending people messages, because it's called disorderly conduct by means of electronic means. So if that had the backbone of hate behind it, then it would fit this enhancement charge on top of that disorderly conduct.
I think that's, and it's not a free speech issue. Just so that, we're
Once it becomes a crime,
Yeah,
it's not.
there's a line between the free speech and hate speech and stuff like that, and then it can cross that line where it turns criminal in nature.
because it becomes, in essence, what is considered an act. In and of itself, it is an act. That threat becomes an act, and it's acts that we punish, in this case, an act motivated by hatred based on those categories gets the enhancement.
Right. But in terms of this policy isn't referring to specific acts. This is just attached to an first, there'd have to be some kind of a crime.
Correct, this policy.
Right.
And then the crime would be
goes along
upgraded
with
to
that
a,
statute.
Yep.
Just
As
wanna make
the,
sure.
as the statute I sent you says, it gets, there's an upgrade, and it's an enhancement, is what it gets called.
Yeah.
And so it might be, what is 6 months in imprisonment, because it's a disorderly conduct. Could be 2 years and 6 months.
because it's disorderly conduct with a hate crime.
Yeah. So
With the hate
the
crime enhancement.
enhanced charge.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Does that all make sense?
It does, yeah. I just wanted to clarify and make sure that I understood how it
Good,
works.
but it's a good question to ask, and I don't think we need to worry about the policy piece, but because the statute is pretty clear about it. But we will reference the statutory sections in footnotes. Anything else for the good of the order, or we gotten ourselves into enough trouble this afternoon as it is?
I'm pretty set, knowing what I know now about like what's coming down the road, I feel pretty comfortable with the policy for now.
Good, you will see it again in your emails.
Okay,
I'm going to give you about, as I say, about 48 hours or 72 hours to look through it, turn around, and send it back to me,
okay,
okay?
okay.
Once Michelle gets some things done and Dan gets some things done, we may actually change a little bit of the way it looks, but it'll come back to you, and it'll be my little note saying, read through this. All of these things will still stay on there. We're not removing any of this.
We'll add some technical changes. and
Will
stuff.
be, yes, things
Like
that
the BPD thing will come in.
yes, all that stuff will have changed. But you'll see all the crossouts too, just so that you know, we're holding on to those at least until it comes before the select board. I don't know that the select board wants to see all that crap.
The
We haven't asked that question.
version history so we can track the different changes that have been made over time.
You got it.
Yep.
And then it will be dated from the date that the select board adopts it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Questions?
One more question for Dan. Do investigators of hate crimes, do they have specialized training, or is that just kind of?
I mean, there's not really anything that I can think of, because then you would get, you can't get specialized training into every single statute kind of thing. It's kind of just part of a day's work kind of thing for us.
Is that something that's covered in your training to become a police officer?
It is
Yeah.
mentioned, we kind of go over what hate crimes are and kind of go over some definitions and everything like that, yes. But as far as anything after that, to actually have an officer or something that's specialized in this type of thing, that's not something that we do know.
There, as Dan has identified before in previous meetings, there are opportunities. I know that the FBI has some for an advanced training in a whole wide variety of stuff, whether you know, and among those would be, you would get, there is training in hate crime.
I'm sure there are further trainings that are available.
If they want it, yes.
It would have to be
And
something
sometimes
that
it's an
is-
individual officer's choice.
Yep.
And we can always talk more about professional development.
Yep.
Anything else for the good of the order, or are we good?
I feel pretty good.
I do too.
Are you good? Because we might be looking at
Yeah. So this 48-hour time frame,
Oh,
are we allowed to make any?
here's what I'm gonna ask you to do. Make me a list of the things places that you are now uncomfortable with,
Okay.
and communicate them directly to me. If they're quite substantive, I'm gonna go back around to all of us who are on the committee and say, Jamar suggested this, and this is why, and I think it's worth our time to do. So yeah, it doesn't end here.
Okay, perfect.
So if you think of something when it all of a sudden it hits your inbox, and you read through it again, and you feel, any of you feel very uncomfortable about what we just did. You need to be very clear with me about that in your response.
So the 48 hours is basically just a suggestion
It's
period.
It's so that I am not waiting for the next week and a half to 2 weeks.
To hear that.
Because it's still got to go to the chief and to the two beyond us.
Okay. And what you're looking for from us is either I'm happy with this or I'd like to suggest.
This can probably try to limit yourself to the purpose of the policy and to the definition, because that's part that we really are adopting.
Yeah,
That makes sense?
it does.
Good. Good. Thank you, everybody. Again, thank you for volunteering your time. You guys, it always amazes me when we end up, how the document seems so much better. Thank you.
Yeah.